António Guterres.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. Since I last briefed you on the UN80 Initiative, work has advanced across all three work streams. Let me begin with a brief update. With respect to the first work stream on efficiencies and improvements, we are finalizing a first package of concrete proposals aiming at strengthening accountability, improving service delivery, and reducing costs across the United Nations system, with particular attention to those who are most in need of our support. For the Secretariat, these proposals will be reflected in the revised estimates for the 2026 programme budget to be submitted for consideration to the General Assembly in the upcoming session. Further work will be developed after this proposal, and it will be included in our proposals for the programme budget of 2027. With regard to the third work stream on structural changes and programmatic realignments, principals from across the UN system are advancing work in 7 thematic clusters. Some briefed you on their initial findings last month. I received an overall preview of their ideas last week, and I'm now receiving their written contributions. I will review their proposals in detail and keep you informed as the process unfolds in order to be able to present concrete options for your consideration in due course. Today, I want to focus on Workstream 2 and specifically the report before you on mandate implementation. You received the report in English yesterday. Translated versions will follow, but the objective of this session is to allow me to do a brief presentation of the report. Let me preface this by clarifying that by mandates, we mean a request or directive for action set out in the UN Charter, a resolution or decision by a UN intergovernmental organ. Before going into the details of this report, I want to stress 2 vital points. First, let me be absolutely clear. Mandates are the business of member states. They are the expression of your will, and they are the sole property and the responsibility of member states. The vital task of creating, reviewing, or retiring them lies with you and you alone. Our role is to implement them fully, faithfully, and efficiently. This report respects that division. It looks at how we carry out the mandates you entrust to us. At the same time, we offer some reflections for your consideration in the case that member states choose to launch an intergovernmental process on mandate review. Second, we recognize that mandates are critical to everything we do. They define our work, they shape our structures, they are the basis of how we are held accountable. And yet, for many years, there has been broad recognition, including most especially by the General Assembly, that the way we manage mandates needs to change. The problems are well known. Burdensome processes, overlap, duplicative structures, and the growing gap between mandates and resources. These issues have been identified many times, including through the 2006 mandate review process. But they were not resolved. In fact, as we all know, these problems have grown worse. We must learn from what went wrong. We must do better, and I believe we can. And let me add this. None of the work in implementing mandates is possible without our staff, the women and men of the United Nations. Across duty stations and time zones, in headquarters and in the field, they are the ones who translate mandates into action, delivering services, supporting peace processes, responding to crises, and upholding the values and principles of the UN Charter every day. Their expertise, dedication and courage are indispensable to this endeavour. If we are to improve how we implement mandates, we must also support and empower the people who carry them out. Excellencies, today I am putting forward some ideas for your consideration focused on practical solutions. These ideas are new and different in three key ways. First, we utilize new data analytical tools to better understand the scope and scale of the challenge. Second, instead of reviewing thousands of mandates one by one, we focus on the systemic and structural issues that cut across them. Third, the urgency of the situation and the potential benefits of reform demand a new level of seriousness and shared resolve. I stress again, this is not about questioning your decisions, it is about implementing them more effectively, more efficiently, and with greater impact. Excellencies, the report before you takes a full life cycle approach to the management of mandates. It begins in how mandates are created, it examines how they are delivered, and it looks at how or whether they are reviewed and assessed. At each stage, the report offers possible actions. Some are for your considerations, others are directed to the Secretariat as appropriate. But one principle runs through them all. We must never lose sight of the people we serve. Mandates are not ends in themselves, they are tools to deliver real results in real lives, in the real world. Let me now turn to some of the specific proposals, starting with mandate creation. The report identifies two major challenges. First, the mandate landscape is vast and often opaque. There is no easy way to know what already exists or what has been adopted across different bodies. Today, there are more than 40,000 resolutions and decisions on the books and counting. The risks of duplication and overlap are clear. One suggestion is the creation of a digital mandate registries, easily accessible tools like those already developed under the UN80 Initiative for the UN Secretariat and by OHCR and the UNFCCC. Those tools could be scaled system-wide. And with AI-assisted analysis, we can now flag potential duplication before it happens. Second, the design of mandates is getting more complex and more difficult to implement. Texts are getting longer. Since 2020, the average word count of General Assembly resolutions has increased by 55%. ECOSOC texts have grown by 95%. Secretary Council resolutions are now 3 times longer than they were 30 years ago. At the same time, Secretariat capacity is being stretched, especially by the growing use of the phrase within existing resources. Last year, 15% of General Assembly resolutions including this language, 4 times more than in 2000. Let's face facts. We cannot expect far greater impact without the means to deliver. By spreading our capacity so thin, we risk becoming more focused on process than on results. That is why the report puts for your consideration a possible shift towards shorter, clearer, and more focused mandates, toward mandates that are adequately resourced, and we also must recognize the need for a culture in the UN system grounded in the most effective ways to deliver real outcomes. Excellencies, let me now turn to the second stage of the mandate life cycle, delivery. In other words, everything we do to act on the instructions you entrust to us. The report identifies three core challenges. First, as you know so well, the sheer number of meetings and reports is pushing the system and all of us to the breaking point. Last year, the UN system supported 27,000 meetings involving 240 bodies. Today, more than half of all mandates require reports. Last year alone, the Secretariat produced 1,100 reports, a 20% increase since 1990. 3 out of 5 reports are on recurring topics. And I have to recognize that they too are getting longer, with word counts over 40% higher than 20 years ago. Yet, many of these reports are not widely read, and we know the difficulties of following so many things at the same time. The top 5% of reports are downloaded over 5,500 times, while 1 in 5 reports receives fewer than 1,000 downloads. And downloading doesn't mean necessarily reading. Meanwhile, the cost is staggering. 1 out of every $10 of the regular budget goes to direct servicing costs, with indirect costs pushing for a total that is far higher. Meetings and reports are essential. But we must ask, are we using our limited resources in the most effective way? We are proposing a series of suggestions to put us on a better course. Fewer meetings, fewer reports, but ones that are able to fully meet the requirements of all mandates, and better designed reporting with tailored formats and monitoring of trends. Second, we must improve how the Secretariat manages mandates and allocates tasks across the system. In the original 2026 programme budget proposals now under review, around 4,000 mandates were cited by multiple entities. This points to real risk of duplication and insufficiency robust mechanisms for strategic oversight. Some 50 citations refer to outdated or inactive mandates. And too often our entities plan their work in isolation without full visibility about what others are doing. I have no doubt that we can find better ways to plan together in a complementary and transparent process. Of course, some mandates, like those related to the Sustainable Development Goals, require multiple actors. But this needs to be done in an intentional way to ensure complementarity and avoid duplication. The report proposes several ideas. A new system of internal controls for strategic and programmatic oversight. A requirement for entities to link mandate citations to specific deliverables where they have clear comparative advantage. And better use of existing coordination platforms across the system. The third area of mandate delivery is funding. In 2023, 80% of the funding of the UN system came from voluntary contributions. Despite the commitment of the 2019 Funding Compact, 85% of the funding of those contributions were heavily earmarked, and over 60% of the total came in contributions of less than $1 million. That raises transparency costs and lowers impact. Meanwhile, pooled funding, which offers flexibility and coherence, is underused and in decline. The result is clear. Fragmented funding combined with fragmented implementation leads to fragmented impact. Each of us has a role to play to address these, and each of us must act on the levers within our control. The report offers some practical ideas to do just that. Excellencies, this brings me to the last stage of the mandate life cycle, mandate review. One might expect mandates to be regularly assessed for relevance and impact, but too often that's not the case. Effective reviews are the exception, not the rule. More than 30% of the subjects of resolutions adopted in 1990 were still the subject of resolutions in 2024. The same mandates are discussed year after year, often with only marginal changes in existing texts. In fact, over half of the recurrent resolutions we analysed were nearly identical to previous versions. In some cases, this may be justified. Some challenges are long-term, with mandates that must endure. But we lack the mechanisms to make those judgments systematically. 85% of active mandates contain no instructions for review or termination. And our working methods do not provide for regular, structured or collective review processes. The report before you puts for your consideration some of these issues and an exploration of ways to streamline and consolidate how mandates are discussed. Closely linked is the challenging of enduring what the entire UN system is equipped with results-based management mechanisms that are not effective at the present moment and that we need to develop, clearly linking activities to resources and results. This is essential for measuring impact and for strengthening accountability. Our current arrangements are uneven. Roughly 40% of UN entities have strategic plans. Only 30% have integrated results and resource frameworks. I believe we should aim to harmonise these mechanisms across the system. That would be a major step towards greater accountability to you, the Member States, and towards better demonstrating the value of multilateralism in people's life. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. President, Excellencies, in presenting this report, I want to reaffirm what I said from the very beginning. Mandates are your prerogative and your responsibility. So too is the ultimate direction of the UN80 Initiative, in line with General Assembly Resolution 79/318. The report contains a set of measures that I can take in order to better implement the mandates that we receive. And, with full respect for your leadership, we offer some proposals for your consideration. I believe that they can help us deliver better results, with greater impact and stronger accountability. The path forward is yours to decide. My responsibility is to ensure that the Secretariat provides the capacities and inputs required by the course of action that you choose. As you reflect on the ideas in the report, the Secretariat is entirely at your disposal for the consultations you may wish to hold in the coming weeks. Thank you once again for this opportunity. I look forward to your insights and guidance. I thank you.
I thank the Secretary General.